Hi, everybody. This is George K with Action Coach, and we've got another Entrepreneur Spotlight interview for you. We've got Terrie here. Terrie, welcome. Thanks for being a guest. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your business, please.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm Terrie Schauer. I'm a real estate investor, and I guess I started out with the hat of the property manager. And I've been doing property management for 20 years, founded a company that does that in Montreal. Then I discovered that it's a low margin business and that if I want to scale, I don't want to have a lot of problems for not a lot of money. And so that then turned into working harder on the investing and taking an equity stake instead of just selling property management services. And then I started doing some real estate coaching.
Oh, wow.
So in addition to still having the property management company and running my investing business, I also have a coaching business where I help other investors learn how to scale or get started.
So how long have you been doing this, Terrie?
So I've actually been in real estate for a really, really long time. I started managing
Years. Just say that.
That's it.
Okay.
So I've 25 years managing properties. I've actually been in business for 15 years. And then I guess the bulk of that in management. And then I've been a full-time investor for, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years.
Wow. Okay. So let's roll back. You were in the business of managing. You realized that you were doing a heck of a lot of work, busting your buns, and when you looked at the bank, you're going, ouch, this is not so good. Was it just you? Did you have employees? Where were you at size-wise at that point?
Yeah, so I had a small team. The rule of thumb is that for about every 80 doors, you need to get an additional person. So I was like at 1.5 that. So I had, a part-time assistant working for me. And like the real eye-opening moment was when I sent a client of mine a $300 bill for some garbage cans. Like the tenants trashed the garbage cans, and like I took the initiative to go and get the person to go there, deliver new ones. And then the guys called me back and started nickel and diming me about that bill. And then I took out my calculator and I typed in how much money I'd made him by managing the heck out of his building. And it turned out I'd made him $250K in the previous year. And he's arguing with me over a $300 bill for garbages. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. This business model is over. And then
Lucky you didn't get a beating.
Yeah, then the script kind of flipped in my head and I was like, no, I need to just do this more intelligently because I'm not making the most of my skills.
Yeah. Wow. That's okay. That's amazing. So you decide to pivot your model, and what did that look like? How were you able to, is that something that is done typically in your industry, or is that something that's a new thing in your industry?
No, I think it's in a sense like pretty typical for people who end up being investors, right? Like I think there are people who operate property management businesses and they're happy having their entire career like that. There are people who are happy being real estate brokers or mortgage brokers and they run their entire career like that. But I think, the wake up moment is kind of the same when you realize that that's all active income, right? And if you are basically doing like a one-stop shop, like when you are a real estate broker, like it's not actually a business unless you have a team. Like really, you're self-employed. You're self-employed, right? And so like if you really want to take the route to passive income or to like uncoupling your income from your work hours, you have no choice but to either acquire assets or else build a business that can run with less you time. So yeah.
One of the tenets of Action Coach is to free the owner from the business. And that's where it's at, 100%. So right now, how many employees are you working with?
My team is about 5 people.
Okay. So talk to us about, this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. Talk to us about how you deal with your HR. How do you bring on people? Like, what is your process for making sure, I mean, I know there's nothing foolproof, but I'm sure our listeners would love to hear some of the insights on how you do that.
Yeah. And I mean, like when I say like that's kind of my permanent team, right? I would say it almost like doubles or triples when you look at all the like subcontractors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a
Yeah.
podcast and building out the podcast team. So there are like 5 slots on that team, right? Like I need a social media manager, I need an editor, I need a video editor, I need a VA who's managing all of these people. So it's like every time you take on a new activity or some other thing that you're doing in your business, you end up with this like stable of subcontractors. So I think there's one thing of like, building your team internally. And I think my, like, I want to say my HR thing is fairly typical. I put an ad on Indeed and which I then often end up sharing to LinkedIn. Then I run a few days of interviews, do my best. And, HR, like where I feel like, oh, you're batting 50%.
You're putting on the HR hat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I did have an HR, like at one point when, I wanted to like kind of align myself with best practices. I had an HR consultant come in, write down, our ads that we put out, write down the interview script, explain to me, like, how do you run a phone interview? So like, I have that I dip into every time I go into like recruiting mode. And then now, I've built like my library of Loom videos and got an onboarding process. And so like, slowly the thing is becoming professionalized.
No, I like it. I love the fact that you went out, you got the knowledge that you needed. You went out and found the knowledge. You put a SOP in place. You put a procedure in place. And unlike a lot of entrepreneurs, it sounds like you try to follow it. And that's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But like, like I've been in business, I guess, for a while now, with various different growth stages. And I guess this like recent growth stage really is to learn what is the difference between being like basically a self-employed person who has like 1 or 2 people that they pay once in a while to get some of the admin tasks done versus like, no, now we're actually building a business, which means that we have to have those like proper procedures in place that allow us to rinse and repeat certain things. Or like if we lose a resource, it's not like I have to do their job for 3 months and I'm thrown into a complete tizzy, right?
Yeah.
But that's all a product of paying for coaching and reading and listening to podcasts and like understanding what are the best practices. Because like, let's face it, I'm a real estate person. I am not a business coach. I am not a marketing manager. I'm not a social media expert. And so if I want
You're
to
not a finance, you don't have an MBA in finance. You don't, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get
So
it.
you have to, educate yourself enough to be able to do the best practices and not try to wear every hat.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so you really started grassroots. So let's say you got like 2 or 3 people on the team. How Tell us about how, I mean, it's a tough industry. I know a little bit about the industry. It's not easy. How were you able to break into bigger clients, get into bigger clients, attract bigger clients? What were some of the things that you were like, what were the tools or the tactics that you used to get you to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, investment real estate, like, if you're talking about like a typical like broker, right? Because I think that's the business everybody thinks about, right? Like a typical broker sells condos or single family homes, and so they have to do a certain transaction volume, and like people are doing a deal every 10 years. So there's a whole lot of churn. And the difference is that when you're working in the investment world, it's like your client list is way smaller. And I think that because I was a property manager, I kind of understood that. Because if you like, let's say you get one owner and like there's really not a lot of good property managers out there. So if you get like one person, they're going to give you their whole portfolio. And if they love you, like they will be able to scale their business because you as the manager are doing a good job. And understanding that means that like, I mean, I have my part, I don't have 30 partners. I have 6 partners, and they're people that I've developed relationships with because first either I bought and sold something with them as a broker, or else I manage their properties. And then we want to deepen our business relationship. And that then ends up, in a slow growth curve that I'm comfortable with, because like ultimately, if you have capital partners, like people are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars down, and that's not a small amount. You have to have a very high level of trust and a high level of comfort that if something goes sideways, as it will, because the lawyer's letters will come, like that's just how real estate is. And so the day that happens, are you guys solid enough and aligned enough that you're, not the finger pointing doesn't start.
So I love that. So what I heard there is that the best marketing is just to deliver the best possible service you can. And you use the word align. To me, that means that the expectations of your clients and your expectations, so what your client expects and what you're going to deliver, are in simpatico. You guys know what to expect from each other.
Yeah, 100%. And like, in the investors that I coach, and some like brokers that I coach as well, because like a lot of brokers get their license because they want to be investors. Like this conversation comes up time and again. And it's that like really it's that question of generating value. And like you can have the best marketing in the world, but if you're not 100% focused on really creating value for people, you're gonna have a whole lot of churn. But that on the flip side, if you're really just obsessed with doing a really great job, the money is going to come to you. And then marketing is just a question of like taking pictures of the really good job that you do and then handling the inbound leads that happen, because people are going to want to work with you because you're so good at what you do.
Yeah. I think the other thing you said is also very key. Despite the fact that there's a lot of people in the marketplace, and it's the 80-20 rule, and I think it's actually a lot less than 80-20. There's only 20% of the people who are really considered players. And of that 20%, there's probably only 1 to 3% that are, like you said, dedicated to doing a good job and always improving. And therefore, like they say, the expression, the air is thin up there, right? Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's like a great stat, which is that like in Quebec, the average amount of money that a real estate broker pulls in is 30K a year. So that should tell you, like when you're seeing the big earners who are
They
bringing
make
in,
more than the average coach, I think.
yeah, like no, like 200-300K, right? But like think of the huge amount of brokers who are just like, scraping by paying their agency fees because like the bar is just not very high.
No, no. I think the last statistic I saw in the greater Montreal area, there's like 17-ish thousand real estate brokers, and there's only 50,000 transactions. And that's in the residential, not in commercial. But
Yeah.
so just do the math. Like that's just not a lot of deals to go around between all those real estate brokers.
Yeah.
And I get that a lot of them they have their licenses, it's a side thing. It's not their main gig. They just maintain their licenses for various strategic reasons. But nevertheless, we know that there are plenty who are trying to make it their full-time job.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is something that requires a lot of dedication. So what's the next step for you? Where are you going? Are you looking to grow, move into other markets, get into other types of other lines? What's your future?
Yeah, so like basically our coaching business with my partner, we founded that back in January. So we'd actually both been coaching for another company for a couple of years, and we ended up branching out on our own because we really, didn't see anybody that we wanted to work for or with who was aligned with our vision on things. So I guess like the next season is really going to be growing that business. We have monthly networking events. And then like building out kind of the coaching side in terms of just like really creating a awesome offer that can help people, reduce the amount of time and risk that goes into starting out as a real estate investor, and then increase the chances that it's actually going to work. Because like typically the challenges that I see are, that's the concern, right? Like people are really worried about the amount of risk or the amount of effort that they're going to have to make. And so the extent to which we can really deal with some of those variables and, help people, that's what we're trying to do. And then, as an investor, I like to say I'm like in a slow growth mode. So I have, certain partners that I love to work with. We've had a successful track record, and then that turns into the portfolio grows naturally because as you do a good job, the fruits come and then you reinvest some of that. So that's what's on the horizon.
I love it. I love it. So this has been great. One of the things, Terrie, that I think is really important for people to understand is that that I heard from this conversation is that you seem to be a learner. You don't seem to be afraid to learn. You understand you need to have a team around you. You need to have people around you to kind of cover all the little projects that you're doing. And you don't sound like the kind of person who wants to hog all of the work. But at the same time, I hear that you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And I think that's what every entrepreneur needs to try to attain. You want to know what you're doing, but you also want to delegate and let good people do what they do best.
Yeah, and to enable it really, like to go from, I recently heard something like to go from like boss to coach, right?
Mhm.
And then how do you set up the structures like that allow you to not take on everybody else's monkeys? Because it's very easy, especially if you've built the business from the ground up, like how to wear every hat. And so sometimes it's easy, like you would when you're parenting, to like just jump in and be like, no, no, that's taking too long. Let me do it for you. Yeah, but then the person or the kid or whoever it is like not going to learn how to do it themselves. And like ultimately for your benefit and theirs, that is the best thing to do. And
Yeah.
so how do you set up an environment in which the people that come into your organization are able to learn how to like deal with their own monkeys and ideally grow in the process?
Yeah. And we call it when you got to slow down to speed up. I mean, it takes a little longer to have a coaching um, methodology with your team. It does take a little longer, but once it's done and it reaps those long-term benefits. And I think that's great. Well, thank you so much for the time you've given us today. I'm looking forward to our next chat so that we can see what the future of the business is going to be. And maybe when you hit to 10 employees, or maybe when you break into another market. So thank you so much. And we wish you all the best of luck.
Thanks, George.